Have you ever felt like your life was being driven by something you couldn't quite explain? Like there was a force behind your choices, your desires, even your suffering, and no matter how much you tried to resist, it kept pulling the strings. What if I told you that a 19th century philosopher named Arthur Schopenhauer not only understood that force but lived in constant awe and torment because of it? This isn't just about some old guy in a wig writing dusty books. This is about your life, your mind, your deepest impulses. Today we're diving into 7 insane facts about Schopenhauer's will that 99.9% don't know. And I promise you, by the end of this, you won't just understand Schopenhauer, you'll start to see reality in a way that most people never will.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Imagine this. You're sitting alone in a dark room for 10 days. No phone, no music, no one to talk to. Just silence and your own thoughts. Slowly, you start to feel like something is staring back at you, something from deep inside. It's not a ghost. It's not a memory. It's something more primal. The Buddhists might call it dukkha. The neuroscientists might say it's your limbic system. But Schopenhauer, he called it the will, a blind, irrational, ceaseless drive at the core of everything. Everything. Not just you, not just me, but every tree, every star, every atom in the universe. Now think about that. What if everything you ever did, every love, every ambition, every fear, wasn't a choice, but a manifestation of this blind will? Not your will. The will. It doesn't care about your happiness. It doesn't care if you suffer. It just wants, relentlessly. And here's the kicker. Schopenhauer didn't think this was just a metaphor or a vibe. He believed it was the actual metaphysical structure of the universe, the thing behind the thing, the curtain behind all appearances. Do you feel that? That low hum in your chest? That's the will, and it's been there the whole time. Here's the first insane fact most people miss. Schopenhauer believed that the will is not rational. It's not even intelligent. It doesn't plan. It doesn't think. It wants, and it wants blindly. That's why you can crave someone who's terrible for you. That's why you can pursue goals that destroy your peace. Because the will doesn't care about harmony, it only knows desire. It's like a cosmic hunger that never ends. And here's where it gets dark. Schopenhauer believed that suffering is not an accident of life. It is life. Why? Because the moment you get what you want, the will moves the goalpost. You thought pleasure was the goal. No, pleasure is just temporary relief from the pain of wanting. Let that sink in. Every time you chase happiness, you're just answering the call of the will. But the moment you get it, the will shifts, and suddenly you're empty again. That's why billionaires feel hollow. That's why fame doesn't satisfy. That's why no matter how much you consume, the hunger never stops. We are puppets, dancing to the tune of a blind, cosmic will that doesn't care if we break. And yet, we keep dancing. Now here's the second fact that will blow your mind. Schopenhauer didn't think this will was just inside humans, but he saw it in animals, in plants, even in gravity. Yes, gravity. The way a rock falls to the ground. That's the will expressing itself. The way a flower turns toward the sun. Will. The way a lion hunts. Will. The way you obsess over someone who doesn't love you back. Will. It's all one force, one primal drive, expressing itself in infinite forms. And you, Yes, you are just one of those forms. So ask yourself, if everything you are is just a mask for this blind will, then who are you really? Here's the third fact, and it's the most practical. Schopenhauer believed that art is one of the only ways we can temporarily escape the grip of the will. When you listen to music, real music, not just background noise, when you lose yourself in a painting or a poem, something strange happens. For a moment you stop wanting, you just are. That's because true art suspends the will. It allows you to see the world as pure representation, not as something you need to conquer or attain, but as something to witness. Have you ever had that moment where time stops and you feel like you're just floating in the beauty of it all? That's not just aesthetic pleasure. That's freedom. That's what Schopenhauer called a moment of deliverance. Think about that next time you're scrolling endlessly, trying to find something that feels real. What you're really looking for is a break from the will. But here's the irony: the more you chase that break, the more the will tightens its grip. It's like trying to run away from your own shadow. So the next time you're overwhelmed by desire, whether it's for love, money, power, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, is this really me wanting this? Or is it the will, using me as its puppet? Let's go deeper. The fourth insane fact is that Schopenhauer believed compassion is not just a moral virtue, it's metaphysical rebellion. Because when you feel someone else's suffering as your own, you pierce the illusion of separateness. You see that their pain is your pain because you're both expressions of the same will. That's not just empathy, that's transcendence. That's the beginning of liberation. And guess what? The will hates that. Because the moment you stop seeing people as tools for your gratification, the will starts to lose its grip on you. That's why Schopenhauer saw saints, not as weak, but as metaphysical warriors. They didn't just renounce pleasure, they renounced the will itself. Can you imagine that? Living in a world that constantly tells you to consume, to compete, to conquer, and saying no. Not because you're weak, but because you've seen the truth. That's not passivity, that's power. That's freedom, but it's not easy. The will doesn't let go without a fight. It will scream, it will seduce, it will whisper in your ear that you're missing out, that you're falling behind. That's the test. That's the battlefield, and you're standing in the middle of it every single day. Now here's something almost no one talks about, the fifth insane fact. Schopenhauer believed that sexual desire is the will at its purest. When you're in the grip of lust, you're not you. You're a vessel for the will. That's why it feels so intense, so irrational. Because it's not about you, it's about the species. The will doesn't care about your love story. It only cares about reproduction. It will make you fall in love with someone completely toxic, just because their genes are a good match. And then, once the biological mission is complete, it leaves you empty. That's why so many relationships crumble after the initial high fades. The will got what it wanted. You're just left with the aftermath. So what do we do? How do we live in a world where the very core of our being is driven by a force that doesn't care if we suffer? That question haunted Schopenhauer his entire life. And it should haunt us too. But not in a way that paralyzes us, in a way that wakes us up. Because here's the sixth fact that might save your soul. Schopenhauer believed that even though we can't destroy the will, we can deny it. Through asceticism, through art, through compassion, through deep, brutal honesty with ourselves. We can choose not to play the game. And that brings us to the seventh and final fact of this first part. A truth so profound most people never even consider it. Schopenhauer didn't hate life. He pitied it. He saw life as a tragic masterpiece, a beautiful, painful, relentless dance of the will. And in that tragedy he found a strange kind of love. Not romantic love, not sentimental love, but the kind of love that sees suffering, embraces it, and says, I see you. I know you. And I still choose to be kind. So now I ask you, what would happen if you stopped chasing and started seeing? If you stopped running from your suffering and asked it what it came to teach you? What if the purpose of life isn't to be happy, but to understand, to see clearly, to wake up from the dream of desire and meet the world as it is? Let's pick up where we left off. You've just glimpsed the terrifying beauty of Schopenhauer's will, the blind, relentless force at the core of reality. And now we go deeper, because once you've seen the will, you can't unsee it. It's not just an idea anymore. It's in the way your mind races at night. It's in the ache of longing. It's in the way you get what you want and still feel empty. But what if I told you Schopenhauer didn't just describe the will, he tried to live with it, wrestle with it, and what he discovered might be the most radical path to sanity in an insane world. Let's get real. Have you ever looked at your life and thought, why do I do the things I do? Why do I chase people who don't love me? Why do I sabotage myself right before I succeed? Why do I feel restless even when everything is going well? Schopenhauer would say, that's not you. That's the will using your mind like a tool, like a parasite that hijacks your nervous system. You think you're making decisions, but you're not. You're reacting impulsively, instinctively, and the will? It laughs. Because it doesn't need you to understand. It just needs you to want. Here's an insane insight. Schopenhauer believed that the human mind evolved not to understand truth, but to serve the will. That's why we lie to ourselves. That's why we rationalize our worst decisions. The mind is a servant of desire, not truth. And if you're not brutally honest with yourself, you'll spend your whole life chasing illusions created by the will. Think about how many people are stuck in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, goals that aren't even theirs. Why? Because the will drove them there. And they never stopped to ask, whose life am I really living? You want to know something wild? Schopenhauer saw the human body as the objectification of the will. Your hands, your eyes, your spine, they're not just physical organs. They're expressions of wanting. Your legs are the will to move. Your stomach is the will to consume. Your heart is the will to love and to suffer. Every cell in your body is screaming, I want. And yet, paradoxically, the only way to quiet that scream is to stop identifying with it. That's where Schopenhauer becomes more than a philosopher. He becomes a guide. He tells us, if you want peace, you have to stop playing the game. That doesn't mean giving up on life. It means seeing through it, seeing through the illusion that more will finally be enough. Because here's the irony, the more you chase desire, the more enslaved you become. Freedom doesn't come from getting what you want. It comes from seeing that you never really needed it. That's the crack in the wall. That's where the light gets in. Let's get practical. The next insane fact most people miss is this: Schopenhauer didn't see suffering as a problem to be solved. He saw it as a teacher, a revealer. When you suffer, the mask slips. You see the will for what it really is: raw, hungry, unrelenting. And in that moment you have a choice. You can numb it, run from it, deny it, or you can face it, really face it. Say to your pain, I see you. I'm not afraid of you. Teach me. That's how you break the spell. Think about your own life. What's the deepest pain you've ever felt? Was it heartbreak, loss, failure? Whatever it was, I want you to look back at that pain, not with fear, but with curiosity. What was the will trying to do? What did it want so badly that it drove you into suffering? And now ask yourself, did it deliver? Or did it leave you more empty than before? That's the trap. The will always promises paradise and delivers a prison. Always. And the only way out is through awareness. Schopenhauer said that true wisdom begins when you stop asking, how can I get what I want? And start asking, what wants me? What force is driving this craving? Is it really me? Or is it the will wearing my face? Now let's flip the script. What if I told you that the most powerful act of rebellion is not action, but inaction? Schopenhauer believed that denying the will, refusing to act on its commands, is the beginning of freedom. Not passivity, not apathy, but conscious non-participation. Imagine that. Everyone around you is chasing, grabbing, posting, flexing, and you sit, you breathe, you let the hunger pass. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's spiritual judo. That's the art of stepping aside when the will charges like a beast. But here's the twist. This isn't about withdrawal from the world. It's about engaging with it from a place of clarity, not compulsion. When you stop being a slave to your impulses, you can finally see. You can love without needing to possess. You can create without needing applause. You can give without expecting anything back. That's not detachment. That's transcendence. That's mastery. Let's talk about a deeper layer most people never reach. Schopenhauer believed that the will is ultimately self-defeating. It wants endlessly, but in doing so it creates suffering, war, jealousy, destruction. Why? Because it's not unified, it's fragmented. Each being is an expression of the same will, but they're all in conflict. One animal eats another. One person betrays another. One nation bombs another. But all because the will is devouring itself. It's like a snake eating its own tail. And in that tragic image, Schopenhauer saw the true nature of existence. So what's the point? Why live at all? That's the question Schopenhauer wrestled with. And here's the answer he came to. Life is a riddle not meant to be solved, but seen through. And when you see through it, you're free. Not in the way society defines freedom, but in a deeper, quieter, almost sacred way. You stop being a character in the play and you become the observer, and the witness, the one who smiles, not because life is easy, but because you've stopped believing the lie that it should be. Let's go even deeper. Schopenhauer was one of the first Western philosophers to engage seriously with Eastern thought, especially Buddhism and Hinduism. He saw in them a mirror of his own views, the idea that life is suffering, that desire is the root of that suffering, and that liberation lies in renouncing the self, in not killing it, not rejecting it, but seeing through its illusions. Have you ever sat in silence and just watched your thoughts? Have you noticed how they come and go, like clouds in the sky? That's not you. That's the will, whispering, want this, fear that, chase this. And when you stop reacting, when you just observe, you taste a different kind of freedom, the kind that can't be bought or earned, only realized. And here's the most mind-blowing fact yet. Schopenhauer believed that true genius is a glimpse beyond the will. That's why great artists, philosophers, mystics, they often suffer. Because they've seen too much. They've seen the machinery behind the illusion, and it isolates them. But it also elevates them. Because in that moment of clarity, they're not just human anymore. They're channels, mouthpieces for something beyond desire, beyond pain, beyond even thought. So ask yourself, when was the last time you had a moment of pure clarity? A moment when everything fell away and you felt like you were just being, not doing, not wanting, just existing. That's the real you. Not the ego, not the story, but the awareness behind it all. And Schopenhauer's entire philosophy is an invitation to return to that place. Not to escape life, but to see it clearly, and in seeing it, to be free of it. Now I want you to think about this. What if everything you've ever been taught about success, about happiness, about meaning, was just the will talking? What if your entire life has been a dream, and you're just now starting to wake up? What do you see? What do you feel when you stop running and start looking? We live in a world addicted to stimulation, noise, distraction. But Schopenhauer's wisdom is a quiet revolution. It says, turn inward, sit with your suffering, watch your desires, and know that you are not them. You are the awareness watching it all unfold. That's not nihilism, that's transcendence. That's the beginning of a life not based on illusion, but on truth. And so, as we stand on the edge of this abyss, I'll leave you with this question. If the will is the source of all suffering, and you are not the will, then who are you? Who is watching this? Who is listening right now? And what would happen, truly, if you stopped trying to become something, and simply were? You've come this far. That already sets you apart from the 99.9% who never even question the machinery of their own lives. You've stared into Schopenhauer's abyss and felt something stir, a recognition, a discomfort, maybe even a strange peace. So now we go all the way in. This final part isn't just about understanding the will. It's about confronting it, standing naked before it, and maybe, just maybe, learning how to live with it, not as a slave, but as something else entirely. Something freer, something real. Let's begin with a truth most people can't handle. Schopenhauer believed that happiness is not the goal of life. Let that land for a second. Not just because it's countercultural, but because it's actually liberating. If you stop chasing happiness, what's left? Presence, clarity, a stillness that doesn't depend on whether things are going your way. But the will wants you to keep running, after relationships, after status, after power, after peace itself. But what happens when you stop? When you just sit with yourself, without needing to be anything other than aware? You start to feel something deeper than happiness. You feel freedom. But it's not flashy. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's soft. And most people never find it because they're terrified to be alone with their own minds. That's why distraction is everywhere. Why people scroll for hours, binge for days, consume until they're numb. Because facing the will, the raw, unfiltered hunger at the core of existence is the scariest thing you can do. But it's also the only way to become fully, truly awake. Now here's something wild. Schopenhauer saw suicide not as a crime, but as a metaphysical statement. He wasn't advocating for it, but he saw the suicidal impulse as a recognition that the will has become unbearable. That life, driven by endless wanting, has reached a point of collapse. But here's the twist. He believed suicide doesn't end the will. Because the will isn't personal. It's not tied to one body, one life. It moves on. It expresses itself in other beings, other forms. The only true escape, Schopenhauer thought, wasn't death, but denial of the will to live. Not in a literal, physical sense, but in a spiritual one. A conscious refusal to play the game. A radical stillness. This is where the philosophy becomes mystical. Because what Schopenhauer is pointing toward isn't just intellectual insight, it's a transformation of consciousness. You can't think your way out of the will. You have to see through it, and that seeing, pure, clear, unattached, becomes its own kind of liberation. Have you ever had a moment where you felt like you were watching your life from above? Not dissociation, but a kind of sacred detachment. That's the beginning of seeing through the will. And what's the result of that seeing? Compassion. Not as a moral duty, but as a natural consequence of awakening. When you realize that everyone else is also being pushed and pulled by the same blind force, that their anger, their greed, their cruelty, their fear, it's all the will acting through them, just like it acts through you. You stop judging. You start understanding. You start forgiving. But not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. That's why Schopenhauer said that compassion is the highest virtue. Because it's the moment when you stop being a separate self and start recognizing the shared suffering of all existence. But here's the paradox. The more you awaken, the more pain you feel. Because you see it everywhere. In the eyes of strangers, in the rush of traffic, in the silent despair of success. And yet, that pain doesn't crush you. It grounds you. It connects you. It opens you up to a deeper form of love, not romantic love, not sentimental affection, but a fierce, clear-eyed love that says, we are all in this together, and I will not turn away. Now, let's talk about genius. Schopenhauer believed that genius is the ability to detach from the will and see the world as pure representation. That's why artists, musicians, poets, and mystics often seem otherworldly. But they're not fully caught in the game. They see the beauty and the horror of existence with the same clarity. And in expressing it, they give the rest of us a glimpse beyond the veil. When you read a poem that stops your heart, or hear a piece of music that feels like it's speaking directly to your soul, that's not entertainment. That's a portal. A momentary freedom from the chains of wanting. So ask yourself, what's your portal? What's the one thing that, when you're immersed in it, makes you forget to want, forget to chase, forget to be anything other than present? That's not just creativity. That's medicine. That's resistance. That's your way of saying to the will, you don't own me. Not today. But here's the deepest, most insane insight of all, and this is the one almost no one understands. Schopenhauer believed that the will is both the problem and the path. Yes, it's the source of suffering, but it's also what drives us to seek truth, to create beauty, to reach for something beyond ourselves. The will pushes us toward awakening because awakening is the only thing that can redeem its blind chaos. In other words, the will is not the enemy, It's the test, the fire that burns away illusion, the teacher that speaks in hunger, in heartbreak, in longing, in loss. So what do we do with this? How do we live in a world ruled by a force that doesn't care about us, but also gave us the tools to see through it? We practice, not in the religious sense, but in the existential sense. We practice presence. We practice stillness. We practice saying no to the seductive lies of more, more, more. We stop measuring life by how much we can get and start measuring it by how deeply we can see. We become warriors of awareness, rebels of the inner world, saints in a society that worships the will. And when the cravings come, and they will, we greet them like old friends. We say, I see you. I know your tricks, but I am not your puppet anymore. That's real power, not the power to control others, not the power to dominate, but the power to not be controlled, and to walk through the storms of life with a quiet center. That's what Schopenhauer offers us. Not comfort, not optimism, but something far more valuable, clarity. So here's my final question to you. If you knew that nothing you ever achieved, owned, or consumed would satisfy you, what would you do differently? How would you live if you stopped chasing and started seeing? What would your day look like if you didn't have to become anything, prove anything, impress anyone, but simply be? That's the door. That's the threshold. And only you can walk through it. You've now seen the 7 insane, hidden truths about Schopenhauer's will. But more importantly, you've been invited into a deeper way of living. A life not based on avoidance, but on courage. Not on illusion, but on insight. And now the choice is yours. Go back to sleep or wake up. If you choose to wake up, you won't be alone. The path is narrow, but it's walked by those who have seen too much to ever go back. And maybe, just maybe, you'll become one of them. Now take a breath. Look around you. And ask yourself the only question that really matters: what does the will want from me right now? And then, with full awareness, choose.